our next speaker does not need a lot of introduction. Although Mr. Daniel David has asked to be listed in our conference as a professor of clinical cognitive sciences, we all know that he is also the rector of the largest university in Romania, Babeș-Bolyai University, our partner in this event. Professor David will be addressing a pressing issue in our society, the relationship between academic research and the society and the economy. After his talk, I will take the chance to ask him a couple of questions. So, Daniel, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this conference. As you can see, my topic is related to university research and innovation. I will try to discuss some basics in the field, but from a university perspective, and then I'm very curious about your questions and comments. So, the first problem we have in this field is that typically we have a very fuzzy definition of innovation. If you check the literature, you will find about dozens of definitions of innovation. However, even if we have so many definitions, and most of the time when you try to discuss about innovation, you should be very careful to define your working definition. Most of the time we can find two components in any approach or any way we try to define innovation. One component is related to what we might call creative ideas, new knowledge. So practically you need this component in order to talk about innovation. Of course, when we talk about creative ideas, they do not float in the air. They are in the publications, be them formal or informal, in patents and so on. Sometimes this new knowledge could come from research. Sometimes they could come by luck, by accident. Sometimes they come from reflective practice. So there are many ways, different ways to get creative ideas and new knowledge. And also the creative ideas could be related to different components. When we talk about innovation, they could be related to products, processes, or business. And the second component, as we know, is related to the implementation of these new creative ideas with impact on the market, because otherwise we don't have the full process or the full component of innovation. Now, if you try to combine these two components, there are many categories, many different types of innovations. And most well-known in the literature are those related to disruptive innovation, radical innovation, sustaining innovation, or incremental innovation. I'm not going to enter into the details because they are well known by you and they are well presented in the literature. But we should be careful to understand, as I said, that no matter how we define the innovation, these two components are most of the time there. Now that we try to understand what innovation is, it's very important to understand the mechanisms underlying different processes involved in innovation. And over the time, I could say that we can identify about 5 or 6 generations of innovation models. I would say that the 6th model is quite new, and I will talk about that lately. So in case of the first generation and the second generation, I would put them together because they are related to what we call linear models in the process of innovation. The first generation is related to the idea of science and technology push. And the main concept is that we try to generate knowledge by research, mainly by basic research, which will impact then on the applied research. The applied research will impact on the technology development, and then we have the product development, and then we have production and marketing. So this is a pretty old model. And the whole idea is that the research is the core component, and the philosophy is research or technology push. Now, truly speaking, these mechanisms exist. This is a pretty good one. However, it doesn't cover the whole story of what innovation is and how we can generate innovation. That is why in the 70s, another model appeared, which is still linear model, but the whole idea is that the market pull rather than science push. And Of course, we all know that the input of applied research and technology development is not necessarily related to basic research. Sometimes everything starts from the market needs, from the demands of the customers, for example, and then you follow the processes described in the slide on the screen. Then, as we all know, we move to the third generation, in which practically they try to combine those two previous models. They try to combine the idea of science push and market pull in what is typically called in the literature the coupling model, combining those two components. And then we assisted to the fourth generation, the interactive models. In case of the fourth generation models for innovation, practically those two ideas of science push and market pull are not only related to each other, but they are combined. They interact to each other in a very dynamic way, and also they try to be related to other components involved in different aspects of innovation. Today, I think that most of us are related to what we might call the network model, the fifth generation of innovation, in which there are different actors, like, I don't know, suppliers, customers, partners. And also we have the research component, but only as one of the others or one of many other components involved in innovation. Now, if I try to think about what is happening in Romania and in the Romanian universities, I would say that many people in universities are still related to the linear model of the 60s, thinking that science push, I mean, you need knowledge by research, and then you move from there. As I said, this is not wrong, but this is not the complete approach. This is very limited. Also, I would say that many people in the business field are still related to the second linear model, market pull. Again, this is not wrong. This is very important, but this is not the whole story. I would say that very few think by the third generation models or by the fourth generation models, maybe because they appeared in the international literature when Romania was in the communist period, right after the anti-communist revolution. So they were not very influential in our way of thinking. And many of us, I think that today are related to the fifth generation model, the network model. Truly speaking, this was quite influential in the Horizon 2020 project program of the European Union. However, I would say that this fifth generation model, although very important, involving all these components, has a very important problem, meaning how we can generate the creative ideas, how we can generate the new ideas. That is why Horizon Europe, so for 2021, 2027, try to keep the component of the fifth generation, but move the science, but move the research as one of the core components in this model. Not only one of the other components, but a very important component, the core component, because the main idea is the innovation, a continuous innovation, which involves knowledge, competencies, trust, direct interaction between different partners, and so on. That is why if you check the whole idea of the European Innovation Council for the next European program, you will see that the main idea is that the European Innovation Council will turn Europe's scientific discoveries into business. So the whole idea is to relate the business again in a more strong way to what we call scientific discoveries. Also, what we can see in the last years is a movement to the evidence-based approach of innovation, because there are many models, but few of them are indeed or are very strongly related to the evidence-based movement. I'm not going to enter into the details because there are, I don't know, dozens of studies in this field. I will just give you an example, a quite recent study showing, for example, how different kinds of innovation, product innovation, process innovation, or business innovation is related to different components from the network model. And if you check everything together, you will see that research and knowledge represent a very important component. For example, knowledge investment. By knowledge investment, I understand, for example, having in your company research and development departments, and knowledge search outside of your company are very powerful drivers of innovation. What is also very strange, but it is still evidence-based, is that the knowledge stock in a specific company is not a strong predictor of innovation. By knowledge stock, I understand here working in the logic of patents. This is in a way understandable, because if you have a patent, you try to implement, to transfer knowledge based on that patent. So the innovation process is not very important to develop something different than what the patents can tell you. So the whole component, or the core component, is mainly related, as I said, to knowledge investment and knowledge search, as you can see on the slide I presented on the screen. So, to make a long story short, there are some implications for the innovation as we try to see it today. As I said, we always need that component of creative ideas or new knowledge. The question is, how can we get the new knowledge? One way is to get the new knowledge from the existing stock of knowledge. You don't have to run new research, but you should be able to look and to understand what is happening with the stock of knowledge we have at this moment and try to find creative ideas there. Often this process is in the logic of pull by need, and it involves what we might call scientist practitioners. So even if you don't work in a research institute, even if you don't work in a university, if you really want to understand the stock of knowledge and try to find creative ideas for different demands, for different market needs, you should think like a scientist practitioner, not only like a practitioner. A second source could be the research. I'm talking here about different kind of research, basic research, applied research, and so on. Sometimes you might have, as I said, new knowledge or creative ideas by accident, by luck. However, in these days, most of the time, these, let's say, new knowledge are considered to be hypotheses, which should be checked quickly by different approach in research in order to see if they are really creative and if they are really new drivers for change. And also what is very important is the reflective practice, as I said before. Again, reflective practice is important, but in these days you would expect that those hypotheses derived from the reflective practice to be checked by research in both logics, push new needs or pull by the needs. So overall, the key component in innovation, I would say, is related today to have and to be involved in different R&D partnerships. These are fundamental. And also to develop your internal R&D departments, R&D groups. Or at least this is what we can formulate as a conclusion based on this kind of research I presented before. And also there are some lessons for the universities. First of all, we should be careful to train our professionals, even in the field of vocational professions, to train our students not only as practitioners, but as scientist practitioners. They should be able to generate new knowledge in the future, even if that is not happening in the university. They should be able to understand the new knowledge from the literature research, even if they are not doing that research. So they should be able to play with the stock of knowledge, which is stronger and stronger at the international level and often presented in the logic of the open access. Then the universities should be very sensitive to the issue of the citizen science. because, as I said, they are bidirectional connections between university and society, and many people outside of the universities try to have creative ideas, new knowledge, and those creative ideas and new knowledge might get a rigorous test in the university in order to explore their potential for future, rather than trying directly to organize a business around that, and then you will just realize that that is not working and you lost time and money. And also, I would say that even if we are very careful to value not only applied research, which can be quite easily related to the needs of the markets, we always in the university try also to promote the fundamental research, the basic research, because we say that this basic research can change paradigm. This could invent new markets. So the potential of change is very strong. It doesn't mean that the basic research should be only bottom up. It could be also think in a very strategic way. For example, knowing that sometimes or in the future we will try to, I don't know, to fly to Mars, we could think to different projects in a strategic way from a fundamental point of view, even if we do not ask specifically what to study there, but at least this is very strategically oriented. And also I would say that the applied research and the development run, especially in the engineering departments, different technologically oriented universities, should be more ecological. I mean, they should be more related to the needs of the market, to the demands of the customers and so on. This is very important. And also the knowledge transfer is fundamental, because many people in the university still think in this way. Once we generated knowledge, we publish those knowledge, and the job is done. You got a degree, you got a promotion, you got a, I don't know, a job and so on. However, people should be trained that the publication or the generation of knowledge is not the end, that is just the beginning to try to move that creative ideas and the new knowledge into the market. And this is very important for the university. So to make a long story short, this is how we see today, at least at Babeș-Bolyai University, the relationship with the innovation. There are many opportunities. So we try to think, as I said, in the sixth generation model, even if I must admit that many people in the universities, including the Babeș-Bolyai universities, are still related to the linear model of 60s, meaning that you should move from research to product and to the market. As I said, that is not a wrong mechanism. That is just an income. That is not a complete mechanism. That is why I think that the sixth generation model, following also the idea of European Innovation Council, is the way to go. So thank you very much. I will stop here, and if you have questions, I would be happy to answer.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel, for the presentation. I believe you raised very important issues here on this matter of research, innovation, society relationship. I especially acknowledge the reference to the approach of the New Horizon program, which I noted also myself. Research-based innovation and co-innovation is at the core of the program, but this research is in close connection, as you said, with stakeholders that can quickly transit the results into the economic and societal fabric of our communities. And since we are here, and this is a question that comes from the public, as the rector of the largest Romanian university, how do you see this relationship between the academic and business sectors in Romania, especially? Are we prepared for what's coming? And how do you see the immediate course of action if we are not prepared? So, Daniel, please.
Yeah, so I think that the relationship is better and better. We have a very strong and very good connection, especially with big companies, which are related to the philosophy of the, let's say, international way of doing business. For example, they really understand that we cannot prepare, for example, students for the specific needs of each specific company. That is why they have to be our partners by internship, by inductions period, and so on, so that our specialists could be learn how to adapt their knowledge learned in the university for the specific needs of the company. Unfortunately, other kind of companies do not understand that. They are not eager to invest time and money for that. So they complain that, okay, the universities do not prepare the students for the market, which is not true. It is true that we do not prepare the students for the specific needs of each specific company. That is why the partnership is very important. And I think that we move into that direction. And I try to think, as I said, in the sixth generation model of innovation, in which we need all those relationships between university, between business sectors, between I don't know, among customers, and so on. But as you can see, what is happening in the sixth generation model already, the generation of new knowledge, the generation of creative ideas is not only one of the components. It seems to be a core of the whole network, of the whole system. So we are prepared for that. As I said, we all have to learn, but I'm pretty sure that we have 7 years in the new financial exercise of the European Union, in which we can be able to access funds so that we improve innovation and competitiveness of Cluj, and why not of the country.
Yes, so we need preparation. That's definitely something that we have to do. And here, universities and whatever the research environment means in Romania needs to acknowledge the fact that cooperation with stakeholders from the society and businesses is very much required.
Right.
We know that Horizon 2020 is a very competitive program. And I want to emphasize that there is a lot of knowledge already among business organizations and NGOs who are participating in the Horizon 2020 program. Us, for example, Cluj IT, we have now currently 4 such projects running in parallel. So there is a lot of knowledge that the private sector has accumulated, and I think this is valuable knowledge for the universities as well.
Yes, but I would add that even that sector should be prepared for the 6th generation innovation process, as I said. So yes. You got a lot of expertise, mainly in the logic of the 5th generation network model. Now it's time to move to the 6th generation together and learn together so that we can access more resources, as I said, for Cluj, and why not for Romania, to improve the competitiveness in these areas.
Exactly. So yes, we have this knowledge. The universities have knowledge, obviously, in the Horizon 2020 programs and all the programs that are currently running. But to be able to increase our success, we need to tighten, let's say, the connections between us.
Right.
And speaking of which, financing research and innovation is always a difficult subject in Romania, although we all know very well that it is one of the main sources of progress and competitiveness, as you highlighted this already. You are a researcher yourself. How do you see the future of Romanian research and innovation sector in the global context?
Okay, so this is a quite complex question. I will try to be brief. First of all, many researchers in Romania put a pressure on our national budget. I mean, this is good, but as concerning the money for research, for innovation, we should also try to target what is happening at the European level. And there we don't have too many applications. We all could say, or could present some cases of success, but overall, if you compare Romania and the number of population to other countries, we are not doing very, very well. So I think that we should be more careful in the new financial exercise of the European Union to target also the money at the European level. Also, I would say that the research and the big universities made a huge mistake. They were not very careful to what is happening with the structural funds. I mean, they are very competitive. Most of the researchers who are quite competitive, innovative, can be found in the big universities, but the big universities invested, as I said, in projects related to our national funds because of the history. They didn't pay attention to the structural funds because they thought, okay, these are not competitive, they are not necessarily related to excellence and so on. And that was a big mistake because, for example, if you apply in a country for a typical project where the rate of success is about 20, maybe 15%, you will get about 300,000 euro. However, thinking in a big project for research infrastructure in the structural fund, you might get millions. Also, sometimes you could get in the country big project of millions of euro, which are much bigger than what is happening even in the European research grants. So that was a mistake because typically people and organizations who access the structural funds were not always the most competitive. So the new ideas, the creative ideas, were not very strong. Most of the time they supported maybe incremental innovation. That is important, but you need also disruptive, radical changes. And that was not happening. Hopefully in the next years, we will be very careful, as I said, to access not only national funds, but also the structural funds and money directly at the European Union. This is very important. Otherwise, we just lose the money.
I completely agree with you that we need to look more carefully at where we apply and for what we apply. One last question before we let you go, Daniela. I know you're very, very busy. One more question from the audience. There are some areas that are more predisposed, let's say, to innovation. In what opinion, what are those areas here in Romania that are more likely to, let's say, see some increase or advance based on research and innovation?
Look, I don't think in that way, because in that way I would be related to the linear models of 60s and 70s. I mean, I would try to identify the strong points of the universities, and then I would say, okay, this is the way to go. Or I would check the needs and the demands from the market, and I would say, this is the way to go. Of course, these are important mechanisms, but this is not the whole story. That is why I always say that it depends from the region, to the university to university. In Cluj, we might expect some fields, some domains. In, I don't know, in Ploiești or in Galați, we might expect other fields. For example, we just applied for a project for Cluj, which is defining the logic of info bio nano for health, which I think it should be the smart specialization of this area, which could offer us a competitive advantage, not only here, but in Transylvania, Romania, and why not at the European level? Why info bio nano for health? Because info is a very strong component. Computer science, it's a very strong component, not only in the Cluj universities, at Babes-Bolyai or at the technical university, but also in the private practice. Bio nano is very important because we are ranked very well at the international level. So it might go in the first linear model of innovation as one of the components. And health is also a strong topic in the universities, in the private field in Cluj-Napoca. And it's a very integrated one, because when we talk about health, that is not only related to the medical component, that is related also to biology, psychology, computer science, technical universities, and other kind of fields. So to make a long story short, I think that each region should examine very carefully the way in which the innovation could be, as I said, not only incremental, but maybe even disruptive and radical to offer strong competitive advantage of this area. And I think my hypothesis, and that was confirmed practically by the evaluation of the project, which was classified or ranked as the first one in the competition 2 months ago, info bio nano for health could be one of the smart specialization of our area, Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. And that could play after that and could have an impact for the whole Romania.
Okay, thank you, Daniel, very much. Before you go, can you please unshare your screen?
Yes.
Cluj Innovation Days 2020 is part of the Future Skills lifelong learning program. The project is co-financed from the European Social Fund through the Human Capital Operational Program 2014-2020.